I know that you have dedicated through the DNA company your work, your life to understanding genetics and the role that it plays when it comes to our health. And we're all individual. We all have unique makeup of our genes, and they all express differently depending on certain factors, different variables. So let's talk about the test. I think this is really important. So there are a lot of genetic tests on the market. Why is the DNA company different, and how does it differ than everything else that's out there?
I think for the first time, I would like to say that so many people have asked me, because of the different things that I've worked with through my career, cancer research, developmental genetics, and now different aspects of human health, cardiovascular, mental health. This is the thing that I want to leave as my legacy, a better understanding of female health. Because so much of our medical sector is aberrantly skewed towards male health, and we are not at all getting or giving our female population, our women out there, as good access to health and education as we should.
Even and especially in perimenopause and menopause, especially understanding that. So
right, and once we understand how radically important, as we've discussed earlier, these hormones are, how they impact gene expression, how they impact cellular function in the circadian rhythm while you are menstruating, in the post-menstrual years of your life, to not know at the individual level what is happening is a real travesty. So what we've done at the DNA company is we've produced what we call our female hormone profile, and it is a test that is dedicated to really parceling out, to really understanding the genetic underlying controllers, the genes, the pathways that define or contribute, and let me choose my words very carefully, that contribute to the uniqueness of how a woman produces, metabolizes, and ultimately detoxifies her body through this awesome process of steroidogenesis, hormone production. Okay, what's unique about this test? What's unique about this test is what we actually is unique about everything that we do. And I said it multiple times when we were speaking earlier, and that is intelligent genetics, first and foremost, it's not meant to be gimmicky. And I can't help myself, Andrea, I really am shocked. As human beings, of course, we're in the time we're now into the Twitterverse, where folks just want 2-sentence catchy phrases. But anything that's important to you, and I use this as an analogy, and it's going to probably be my most impassioned plea to our audience. If you were taking a vacation, if you were buying a new car, if you were buying a new gadget, you spend so much time reviewing, studying, looking up hours upon hours as to where you would go and what's the best place to stay and what's the best version of the best car that you want to buy, and so on and so forth. We spend all of this time educating ourselves, becoming familiar with these things. Yet when it comes to your own health, when it comes to your own operating manual, you want something that's gimmicky and 2-sentence catchphrases. This is a huge disconnect. Your genetic makeup and the awesomeness with which it controls the way the human body works deserves a bit more time for you to take that time, just as you would take some time to understand all of the other important decisions that you're making. We need to give a bit more time to understanding this thing that defines us as individuals. So what we do differently at the DNA company, and frankly, it's just, I think, what is proper. First, we've got to understand that genetics is not trivial. It's not meant to be gimmicky one-liners. Secondly, we've got to understand that genetics is not everything. By margin, it's not everything. Knowing your genetic makeup is to know, at least the goal should be, in our opinion, to know how cellular functions, different things, different aspects of the cells, different important jobs that the cells have to do. It's to understand that at the individual level, to understand how then nutrition choices, lifestyle choices, environmental choices impact the genetic blueprint, because they all come together, and to really fizzle and work with that under the guidance of intelligent, skilled clinicians, healthcare providers, to make what? And to start being able to do what? Make better individual optimal health choices.
Which is what it comes down to, making those healthy
that's what it
choices.
comes down to.
This is what
So
we're about.
everything about this report
Okay.
is designed to tell you the story, to hold your hand and walk you through how your body, first and foremost, how your body does the different things of making the hormones, metabolizing them, detoxifying their byproducts, letting you know where you are on that awesome spectrum, because there are differences at each step, and then helping your clinician therefore understand, now that I have put my patient, she's no longer N of 1,000 or N of 10,000. She's N of 1. She is the individual person. Now I can make far better informed decisions, be they decisions as to what hormone replacement is optimal or not, what lifestyle choices are optimal, what nutrition choices are optimal
What
or
diet?
not, what diets are optimal,
Yeah, we
what
look at the
exercise
diet.
regimens.
Can we digest starch? Can we digest fat? I mean,
Absolutely.
this is why I went paleo, because I understood that my body could not digest starch. And just by cutting out specific starches that I was eating, I was able to actually feel a lot better.
And you know, because of course, those nutrient metabolites, when we eat starches, we're introducing glucose ultimately, we're introducing sugars into our body, i.e. after digesting the starches, we introduce glucose into the bloodstream. That glucose triggers a number of cascade reactions in the body. Those cascades and how the body responds to those cascades are genetically individual and can ultimately create inflammation, which can ultimately affect mitochondrial function. And I'm only focusing on mitochondrial function because there's a time and place for everything. And right now you're hearing some of the greatest minds in the medical industry speaking about this and really starting to understand the importance of this. And we can all, one word to leave here with today, try to better educate yourself about the things that can create and increase inflammation in your body. And that's not a pie in the sky term. It's a very real term. It's a very real biochemical concept. And your hormones and your hormone metabolism and everything about your hormone health plays a radically important contributor to your inflammatory status. And so if you are going to understand that controlling inflammation is going to be one of the keys to optimal health and longevity, and if you're going to understand that your hormone health contributes to that inflammation, you quickly understand that understanding hormone health is understanding your overall health and your options for longevity and well-being.
I mean, it's proven now, experts all, they agree that we know that inflammation leads to chronic illness. So it's not like it's, made up here. This is what experts and
to be clear,
medical experts are saying.
Inflammation is an important process.
It helps to heal
It's part of
cuts
the healing process. It's part of the remedial process.
Chronic inflammation.
But chronic inflammation, right? That's the cry wolf. When the body, when your cells, your organs are constantly sending out signals of inflammation, your body wasn't designed to deal with that. Your body was designed to get signals of inflammation in short bursts, at acute times, from an injury, from something else, but not chronic day in, day out inflammation. That's a cornerstone of modern life, and it's a cornerstone of what we now understand as the real basis of so many of the diseases that we can speak about. So Andrea, you asked me earlier to walk our audience through just the simplicity, and so we take away any of the anxiety, any of the unknown about what is this test and what it can do. So the first things first is, what do we need for this test? We need a sample of your DNA. And whether we get that DNA from saliva or blood or tissue, it's the same DNA that defines your operating manual. So what we've chosen to do, we and many others out there, is the technology by which we can get your DNA from saliva is now one that is universal. It's extremely robust. It's good technology. So the first thing about this test, it is quite as simple as spitting, forgive me, in a tube. You're literally going to give a bit of saliva.
Open it up, so here, just to show you. That's what it looks like. And then you open up the container, and then inside you can see here.
Literally just a collection device that you're going to collect your saliva in. It's important that the saliva that you're going to give, the saliva sample that you're going to give, is what we call a natural, clean sample. And it's really important. So what does that mean? It means that you probably want to give it not within, in other words, separate about an hour to two from the last meal that you've had. Yeah. A lot of individuals out there, by sort of their natural disposition would be they want to go wash their mouth or brush their teeth before you. Don't do that, because we actually want to collect the natural cells, your cells, in your saliva. So in other words, just a natural clean mouth.
Just don't eat for 2 hours.
Don't eat for 2 hours, and don't brush or wash your mouth or drink or smoke before you've had your sample. So this is the first important point. From that saliva sample, we're going to get your DNA. Now, important. What we're doing here is we're not trying to predict disease. Okay, this is so, will you tell me my risk of cancer?
People get very nervous about that.
No. What we're doing is, as we've discussed for this entire episode, is we're looking at your operating manual to deduce the efficiency or reduced efficiency of important processes. The process, the mechanism by which your body is going to make your hormones, by which your body is going to metabolize your hormones, by which your body is going to detoxify the metabolism. These processes. Now, the efficiency or lack thereof, the inefficiency of these processes, most certainly can help you and your healthcare provider understand why there might be some predispositions, most certainly. The predispositions, because of course, if you happen to be a young woman, can you imagine that she is innately estrodominant? Simultaneously, she has an innate predisposition for making more of that very inflammatory 4-estrogen. Simultaneously, she's not very good at getting rid of the 4-hydroxyestrogen and detoxifying. You can start imagining.
Is this report very simple for people to be able to take it to their doctor or healthcare provider? So it's designed for that.
We really put a lot of effort into this, and it's the culmination, I should say, Andrea, of almost 9 years of work that I've put into this and our company, that we really went through initially producing. You had those very science-heavy reports. And again, I was always the voice that wanted to make sure that we were not trivializing and creating jingoistic reports. What we've done now is, after listening, we work with dozens upon dozens of MDs, naturopaths, healthcare providers.
I love that you're working with MDs, the medical communities, and the holistic world.
Absolutely.
And
I'm really trying to bring this together so that we can create a unified, intelligent message. I stress for our audience, this is meant, do not self-medicate. Do not try to say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to run off in the woods. And speak to a healthcare provider. And this was designed to be the medium by which you can introduce this topic to your healthcare provider.
This is the research. This is the science. This is your blueprint. This is the, it's not airy-fairy. This is actual.
Everything that we've put into here, we only put information. That's a really important point, Andrea. It's actually something else. When you ask me, what do we do differently? Many individuals have said, Monsoor, there are genetic tests out there that test for so many other genes. Why don't you test for as many genes per se? Why don't you read, all of the blueprint and so on and so forth? And my answer is twofold. Number one, patients will come to me and say, do you test for the genes for eye color or for hair type? My response, somewhat glibly, is go look in the mirror. Okay, so there's some genetics that it's kind of fun and quirky to find out whether you have sticky wax versus not sticky earwax, or you've got blue eyes versus not. Fair enough. That's fun and games as far as I'm concerned. What I want to do with genetics is I want to only choose the information that has been verified, has been verified in human clinical trials, by the way, across different ethnicities. So much of the genetic results out there, so many genes and their studies can be divergent between different ethnic groups. And a lot of the studies, let's just call it for what it is, has been done in Western European populations, and we don't understand as much of the interpretation as it might apply to African communities.
So the DNA company, I'm just going to repeat it so I make sure I understand, and for those of you who are watching, so this applies to all ethnicities.
And if there is a difference in the interpretation based on the core scientific literature, and by the way, there's a lot of that out there, why would a certain gene and a certain version of that gene, in the context of its cellular function, exert a different impact in the Han Chinese population versus Western European population versus South Asian versus African. These things exist. And if we're to create gimmicky reports that say, here's your gene version and here's what it means, and you don't know to whom that result is going to, you're really doing a disservice.
No, so you basically, and I know you came up with these genes. This was you who kind of came up. I think how many genes are we testing? With the story. So how many genes are you testing for with this test?
Actually, so when we look at about 70 odd genes that contribute to multiple pathways.
Okay.
And one might ask, but there's another test that looks at 400 or 500 genes. Good, so long as that information has been confirmed in human trials, confirmed so that we understand the real importance of it, and so long as that information actually tells you something meaningful. We don't want to be the gatekeepers of a person's genetic information, but we certainly don't want to provide you with information for which we don't know what it means, or we don't know at least to a certain level of competence what it means and how we can act upon it. So what we've taken is we've taken a very mature perspective. We've said we want to provide information that is verifiable, actionable, and anyone that does this test, once they and their healthcare providers read, they will witness, they will be able to personalize, this is why such and such happens. That's what we wanted to be able to do. We wanted to be able to create a test and a report and information that creates those epiphanies, the same epiphanies that you had when you said, Monsoor, my gosh, it was as though you were reading my storybook without knowing me. And that actually is what we're doing.
I was in tears. I think I was in tears. I don't know if you remember, but it was a few years ago. I literally, you had told me my story without even knowing me, and I was in tears because for me it was like, oh my gosh, like this explains who I am. This is my blueprint, and you got it to a T just by obviously by checking,
it's
my
by
genetics.
checking systems in the body, by elevating the discussion from trivial, gimmicky reports to something that's meaningful. That's our goal. And so if you'd like to find out the color of your eyes, or whether you're 10% Neanderthal or 40%, that's not what this test is going to do. Yeah. Also, this test is not going to tell you you've got a 30% increased risk of this disease or a 20% increased risk of that. That's not what this test is about. What is this test and this report about? It's about telling you how important functions, deducible, verifiable functions in your body, what is the degree of efficiency with which that function is happening, how does that correlate to your body's ability to make, metabolize, and get rid of your hormones? And most importantly, how can you then use that information with your healthcare provider to answer fundamental life, nutrition, environmental choices for your hopeful perspective, which is the goal of all of this, attaining optimal health.
If you have any questions about what Dr. Monsoor is saying, please leave them below. We're going to do our best to answer all the comments, as well as if we have any questions that we can't answer, of course, we will go to Dr. Monsoor and the DNA company. And you're probably wondering, how much is this test? And because I would be wondering it at this point, we've been talking so much about it. And the test is extremely reasonable, and we have a special rate just for naturally savvy viewers, which I was very, very thankful to the DNA company to giving us this actual great price. So the price is $399 for the test. It's a one-time cost. And with that, they're also giving us a $90 free consultation with a naturopath. So when you get your actual result, you will have a consultation with one of their naturopaths. And to me, that's amazing because we can read the results. You can bring it to your healthcare practitioner, but having someone from the DNA company review it with you is incredible.
It's a really important point that you've made there, Andrea, and that is, it's not just about the test. It's not just about the report, as much as we've done and tried and really put a lot of effort into making this report accessible, readable, but it's also ultimately no report in its two-dimensional nature is going to know the nuances of your life experiences. How did your body respond at a certain time? What medications you're on? What hormones you're on? You need to integrate that knowledge with a healthcare provider.
And then you will have
the fuller picture of really how because remember what we said, this all needs to be interpreted into the big picture. Okay, and so what we do, and we viewed it as a responsibility to ensure that for those, especially for your community, and being so honored to work with you, that we wanted to make sure that anyone in your community that does this test, not only do they get this awesome report, and by the way, have access to our websites that will continuously have, you know, blogs and additional information, but they get a priori access to a consult with clinicians who've been trained. And we have several clinicians across North America, MDs and naturopaths alike, nurse practitioners. We have clinicians that within their scope of practice, importantly, that are skilled and trained in this, that have worked with us to understand they're the healthcare provider. How might they use this information? Ultimately, the final decision of health choices resides in the individual and their healthcare provider, but how can they use this information to tweak and optimize or alert them as to something that's going on? We've done that now with numerous clinicians across the North America.
And that's where the value is, really, is working one-on-one with a clinician. And that's why we're really excited to offer it to you, our Naturally Savvy YouTube audience, because we are, you know, without having that one-on-one, I think it's harder to understand, right? So having that attention, that uniqueness, that N equals 1, like you were saying, just for your actual genetic makeup, I think is incredible. If you have any questions, I know I just mentioned this, but if you have any questions that we didn't even talk about today, maybe there's some questions that have come up for you that we didn't answer, again, leave them below. And Dr. Monsoor, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you think, you know, that we should talk about, or if there's anything you want to leave our audience with?
I think, you know, we've spoken from the point of generalities to getting more specific. If I could summarize in maybe sort of a very quick stratified manner. Number 1, know the uniqueness, your genetic predisposition for hormone production, metabolism, and detoxification. Know how your body changes doing everything I just said when you were in your menstrual years versus your menopausal years. And there are big changes there, big changes that occur morphophysiologically in your body. Know what those changes are. Know what your genetic underlying predisposition will be in addressing those changes. Know what you can do about those predispositions. Understand how this fits into the bigger picture of the inflammatory load on your body. Hormone production and metabolism is one of the major contributors or potential contributors to the inflammatory load. This is a real biologic concept. Understand how that impacts you, and once you get in that mode in your mind, once you understand what this means for your body, Andrea, the key here is that it's not going to only be relevant to your hormone health. It's going to be relevant to a number of other things: cardiovascular health, weight loss. It's going to be relevant to mood and behavior. It's going to be relevant to neurologic concerns of the body. So this really, to be honest, becomes a stepping stone, a first place, an introduction to really getting to know your body, and then actually moving down, depending on the health path, whether it's a familial health concern, cardiovascular disease is what really runs in my family, or mood and behavior concerns is the big one, right?
Especially in menopause.
Absolutely. And we know this. And we know the changes that occur within menstruating years. We know the changes that occur menopausally. And it's not for somehow this person just changed their mood and behavior. It's that there are changes secondary to these hormonal events, to these hormonal changes, and the genetic underlinings of it. So I guess what I would say is to the audience, you should always go on a journey. Make your health a journey.
A priority.
A priority. And it's an ever-learning, embrace it, and embrace the ability to know that you can learn more and more about yourself. And were you to have 5 lifetimes, you couldn't understand the beauty and the awesomeness of the human body. So make it something exciting, make it something you give at least a bit of your time. Do not just give your health off to someone else. Just as much as now you want to always focus your energies on whatever your passion is, make your health and your health journey a passion. That's what I would say.
Well, that was well said. And what we're going to do is we're going to put links below to the actual website where you can order a test. We also have to give you a special code so that way they know that it came from this video from Naturally Savvy so that we can give you the special price. So we appreciate your time today. We appreciate you being with us. I know this was a longer video than some of our others, but it was such an important one that I wanted to do, and so grateful to you, Dr. Monsoor, for coming here. And I know you're a busy, very busy man, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk to our Savvy family, because this is important stuff.